Creflo Dollar had always been a name that carried power, respect, and influence in the Christian world. But what happened recently changed everything. You won't believe how a calm church event suddenly turned into a storm that shook the faith community to its core. It all started when Creflo Dollar, known for his bold sermons and global ministry, decided he could no longer stay silent about something he believed was eating away at the heart of true leadership. And let me tell you, when he finally spoke, no one expected what came next. This is how it all began. Behind the bright lights and polished sermons, tension had been brewing between Creflo Dollar and Pastor Brian Carn. Both men were leaders, both were admired, but their paths had started crossing in ways that didn't sit right. Reports suggested small disagreements, quiet remarks, and differences in how each viewed leadership in ministry. But here is the shocking part. Instead of letting things settle privately, Creflo chose a completely different route. He decided to face the issue head-on, in public, in front of people who would remember this moment for years. When news spread that Creflo had openly called out Brian Carn, it sent shockwaves across church circles. People asked, why now? And what really happened behind the scenes? The truth was, what started as a private disagreement over influence and interpretation had grown into something much bigger. This was no longer about sermons or church programs. It was about poor pride and what happens when two strong voices in ministry collide. And this is where it gets interesting. Insiders claimed that Brian had made comments hinting at disagreement with Creflo's teachings, especially regarding leadership and wealth in ministry. For someone as influential as Creflo Dollar, that wasn't just criticism, it felt like a public challenge. Creflo's decision to confront Brian wasn't just emotional, it was strategic. Those close to him said he had been silent for months, weighing every word before finally deciding to speak. So when he walked up to Brian during that meeting, calm but firm, everyone felt something big was about to happen. The air in the room became heavy. Witnesses later said you could hear a pin drop as Creflo addressed Brian directly, questioning his statements and his intentions. He didn't raise his voice. Instead, he spoke with the kind of authority that made every word echo. The craziest part was that Creflo didn't stop at vague hints. He mentioned specific moments, things Brian had said on social media and in smaller gatherings. It was clear that this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a reckoning. Brian, on the other hand, tried to keep his composure. He listened, nodded, and responded respectfully at first. But as the conversation went deeper, tension started rising. Some say Brian defended himself by claiming his words had been taken out of context, that he never meant to question Creflo's integrity. But destiny took an unexpected turn that day. The calm exchange quickly became charged, with emotions spilling through every word. For many watching, it felt like witnessing two giants of faith standing face to face, not as preachers on stage, but as men defending their principles. And what makes this story different is how public it was. In the past, pastors might have handled such matters behind closed doors, away from cameras and social media. But not this time. Creflo wanted transparency. He wanted accountability. And by confronting Brian in front of witnesses, he made sure no one could twist or hide the truth. The confrontation lasted only a few minutes, but its impact was massive. Phones were already recording, and by the end of the day, clips started appearing online. What had happened in one room suddenly became a global debate. People were shocked. Some supported Creflo, praising his courage to address what others were afraid to say. Others criticized him, claiming the public nature of the confrontation went too far. But either way, one thing was certain. The Christian community had never seen anything like this before. This was not just about two pastors disagreeing. It was about the image of leadership, the question of integrity, and how power works within modern ministries. As the news of Creflo Dollar's confrontation with Brian Carn began to spread, the Christian community found itself split right down the middle. Social media erupted overnight. Hashtags with both pastors' names started trending. You won't believe how quickly people began choosing sides, some calling Creflo a bold leader standing up for truth, while others accused him of humiliating a fellow pastor in public. But here's where it gets interesting. Behind the loud opinions and viral clips, there were whispers that this feud went much deeper than what anyone had seen on camera. Let me tell you, what happened after that confrontation was just as dramatic as the moment itself. Those who were present said that once Creflo left the room, Brian remained silent for a long time, almost in shock, but within hours, his team released a short statement saying he respected all men of God and had no intention of creating division. It sounded peaceful on the surface, but insiders claimed there was tension boiling underneath. Creflo, on the other hand, didn't back down. He reportedly told close associates that he did what needed to be done, not for himself, but for the integrity of ministry. And that statement alone lit another fire online. The craziest part was that this story didn't stay within the church walls. Major Christian blogs, talk shows, and even secular news outlets picked it up, calling it one of the boldest public confrontations in modern ministry. Clips from the event were replayed everywhere, with slow-motion edits and captions that made it look like a showdown between two spiritual powerhouses. Every word Creflo spoke was analyzed, and every reaction from Brian was discussed as if it were part of a movie. But here's the shocking part. While the public debated who was right or wrong, there were reports of private phone calls between both sides, attempts at reconciliation, and even respected elders in the faith stepping in to calm the storm. Still, peace didn't come easily. What makes this story different is how personal it became. This wasn't just about ministry, teachings, or church growth. It was about credibility and influence. Many said that Creflo, who had faced criticism before for his teachings on prosperity, wanted to prove that leadership meant accountability, even if it meant calling out someone he once admired. On the other hand, Brian's supporters argued that his character was being misrepresented and that he was being painted as a villain in a story that had two sides. Destiny took an unexpected turn when people started digging into old interviews, sermons, and videos of both pastors, searching for clues about when the tension had really begun. Some fans claimed they had noticed subtle jabs between them months before the confrontation, small remarks about leadership and doctrine that now made perfect sense. Others suggested that financial disagreements or influence over shared church events might have added fuel to the fire. Whatever the reason, the more people searched, the deeper the story went. And this is how the situation spiraled into something far beyond what either man probably expected. Churches began hosting discussions about leadership, ethics, and online ministries started live panels debating the right way to handle conflict among pastors. It wasn't just gossip anymore. It had turned into a larger question about how the modern church handles accountability in the age of social media. Everyone had an opinion, and no one could stay neutral. But here's the twist. While all this was happening publicly, sources close to both pastors claimed that something else was going on behind closed doors. Private meetings were being arranged, respected mentors were reaching out, and quiet conversations were happening to prevent the feud from going completely out of control. Some even hinted that both men realized how far things had gone and were seeking a way to bring peace without losing face. Still, the public didn't know this yet. To them, the feud was alive, the tension was real, and the drama wasn't slowing down anytime soon. As days turned into weeks, the aftermath of the confrontation refused to fade away. Instead of calming down, the story kept gaining momentum. You won't believe how many unexpected twists began surfacing, and each one made the situation even harder to ignore. What had started as a single confrontation between two pastors now turned into a full-blown conversation about leadership, pride, and the price of influence in the church world. And let me tell you, every new detail made people wonder if this was about accountability or something far more personal. This is how the tension deepened. Both pastors continued their regular church services, preaching as usual, but their congregations could feel the shift. The energy was different. Whenever Creflo spoke about integrity or leadership, people leaned in, wondering if he was subtly referencing Brian. And when Brian addressed forgiveness, loyalty, or humility, the audience couldn't help but connect it to the recent drama. Even though neither mentioned the other by name, everyone knew exactly who they were talking about. The craziest part was how every sermon, every live stream, and every quote became a clue in the ongoing saga. But here is the shocking part. Instead of fading, the feud seemed to grow stronger online. Influencers began uploading videos analyzing the confrontation frame by frame. Memes and reaction videos flooded platforms like YouTube and TikTok, and before long, both pastors were being discussed, not just in church circles, but across entertainment pages too. What makes this story different is that it crossed over from ministry to mainstream. The drama had become too big to stay confined to the pulpit. Even people who had never watched a sermon before were suddenly curious about what really happened between Creflo Dollar and Brian Carn. Behind the scenes, however, the reality was far more complex. Sources close to both pastors revealed that mediators had stepped in, urging reconciliation before things went too far. Meetings were held quietly in neutral locations, attended by church elders and trusted advisors. Those who were present said both men were emotional, acknowledging that the situation had gone public in a way neither had truly intended. Destiny took an unexpected turn during one of those private meetings when Creflo reportedly told Brian that his goal had never been to embarrass him, but to remind every leader, including himself, that accountability matters, even when it's uncomfortable. Still, the road to peace wasn't easy. Trust had been shaken, and public opinion continued to fuel the fire. Some claimed Creflo had done the right thing by setting an example of transparency, while others argued that such matters should always remain private. Church members debated the issue during Bible study sessions, preachers discussed it on podcasts, and Christian news outlets kept running updates on the dollar versus Carn tension. And this is where it gets interesting. Rather than destroying both reputations, the controversy strangely boosted their visibility. Their online followings grew, their sermons gained more views, and new people began tuning in to see what they'd say next. But Destiny wasn't done twisting the story yet. A few weeks later, rumors began to spread that a major conference one both men were scheduled to attend might bring them face to face again. Speculation ran wild. Would they avoid each other? Would they reconcile in front of everyone? Or would another confrontation erupt? Tickets for that event sold out faster than anyone expected, with people desperate to witness what might unfold. And while neither pastor confirmed their intentions, whispers suggested that something surprising was being planned behind the scenes, something that could either end the feud for good or reignite it entirely. By now, the story had become bigger than both men. It had become a reflection of modern ministry itself, how easily reputation could be built or broken in the public eye, and how faith leaders were learning to navigate influence in an age where every word could be recorded, shared, and judged within seconds. The craziest part? No one knew what would happen next. Would this controversy end with forgiveness or further division? The world was watching, and both pastors knew the next move would define how they'd be remembered. As the much-anticipated conference day finally arrived, the atmosphere was electric. Everyone seemed to sense that something major was about to happen. You won't believe the kind of buzz it created. Reporters, church leaders, and followers from both sides filled the venue, their eyes fixed on one question. Would Creflo Dollar and Brian Carn finally face each other again? The tension was thick, like a storm waiting to break. And let me tell you, what happened that day turned out to be something no one saw coming. This is how it unfolded. Creflo took the stage first. His message that evening wasn't fiery or defensive. It was calm, deeply reflective. He spoke about humility, grace, and the need for unity in the body of Christ. People were silent, hanging on every word, knowing the weight behind them. But here is the shocking part. Halfway through his sermon, Creflo paused. Then, to everyone's surprise, he mentioned Brian Carn by name. You could hear gasps in the room. Some people leaned forward in their seats, while others held their breath, waiting for what he'd say next. Creflo didn't attack or criticize. Instead, he said that no matter how strong a disagreement becomes, God's will always leads back to peace. He admitted that emotions had run high, that leadership often brings hard choices, and that he too was learning through the process. What makes this story different is that in that single moment, Creflo turned what had been a public feud into a powerful example of humility. He said leadership was not about winning arguments, but about demonstrating grace, even when the world is watching. And then destiny took an unexpected turn. As Creflo stepped back, the crowd stirred. From the side of the stage, Brian Carn began to walk forward. The audience couldn't believe what they were seeing. Cameras started flashing. People were crying, some even praying aloud. Brian walked up to Creflo, took the microphone, and said something that silenced the room. He thanked Creflo for his courage to speak openly and admitted that the entire situation had tested both of their hearts. He said, "We might have stood on opposite sides for a moment, but we serve the same God who brings reconciliation." The craziest part, they embraced right there on stage. Two men who had been at the center of weeks of controversy stood together, not as rivals, but as brothers in faith. The audience erupted in applause. People wept. Social media exploded with clips of the moment, calling it a miracle of humility and forgiveness in real time. Even critics who had taken sides earlier began to praise the act, calling it a turning point for modern ministry. But this is where it gets interesting. While many saw that moment as the end of the feud, insiders revealed that both pastors had already agreed privately to let the world witness reconciliation instead of division. They had planned this display not as a performance, but as a message. They wanted to remind people that the true test of leadership isn't in confrontation, but in the ability to forgive, to rise above pride, and to set an example for others to follow. In the days that followed, the narrative shifted completely. Headlines changed from Creflo Dollar confronts Brian Carn to Creflo and Brian show power of forgiveness. Churches used their story in sermons about grace, and followers on both sides began coming together again. It was as if the controversy that once divided had now become a bridge for healing. And let me tell you, the deeper message was clear. No matter how public the disagreement, faith has the power to restore what pride tries to destroy. Their story became more than news. It became a lesson about leadership, humility, and the strength it takes to say, "I was wrong, but I choose peace." By the end, everyone realized that what started as a clash of egos had turned into a testimony of transformation. It showed that even in moments of division, reconciliation is possible, not through power, but through purpose. And that, more than anything, is what made this story unforgettable